Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. This is Muskoka Limit Podcast. I'm your host, Chris O'Cutie, as per usual. Before we get started and I introduce our amazing guest today, what we're going to do is just give a quick thank you to That Little Place by the Lights Italian Eatery in downtown Huntsville, Ontario, on Main Street. You can't miss it. It's the only Italian restaurant downtown on Main Street. So thank you to them. They are our October and November podcast sponsors, and we're running an awesome contest this year. Head to the website to check it out. So that being said, all that long intro. Today, very special guest who I'm very grateful she took some time out to chat with me, Evalyn Parry. Evalyn, thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So the reason we're chatting with Evalyn today is she's coming to Huntsville and she's doing a show at the Algonquin Theater as part of the Huntsville Festival of the Arts, lineup this year in 2023. And Evalyn is doing a show called Spin. And well, I'll let Evalyn, you can describe Spin to the audience.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, it's a show that is a kind of hybrid of a concert and a theater piece, and it explores the little-known feminist history of the bicycle. And in the show, we use a bicycle as a percussion instrument that accompanies a lot of the show. It sort of weaves together a whole lot of different stories about early female cyclists, including the first woman to ride around the world on a bike in 1895.
Awesome.
Whose name is Annie Londonderry, and is kind of a reclaimed from the dusty annals of history. A woman who did an amazing thing at a time when few women were doing anything of the sort, but it was kind of part of a moment when the bicycle in the 1890s was the peak of technology and was a really exciting new invention. So I'm a contemporary cyclist, an urban cyclist, and have had a long love affair with my own bike and with cycling. And the show was kind of inspired by that in a very personal way. And then as I began to research, I discovered all these amazing women on whose shoulders I stand. But, I had a history that I hadn't realized and deeply inspired me. So that's a little taste, I guess, of what the show's about.
That's awesome. And I love that, your inspiration is the fact that you go on bikes, you're on bikes, you enjoy doing it. And then you decided to research things, and that came Annie Londonderry and her wonderful, she traveled around the world, I guess, right?
She did.
And that was at a time, like you said, where it was not real. It was unheard of. It was unheard of that a woman would travel around the world on a bike. It was unheard of. Bikes were just becoming popular, right, at the time. And I think that's so cool. Do you think that part of what you're doing is also spreading that message and that history around that is kind of unknown to the public?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the show's a vehicle for it's storytelling, really, but accompanied by music and done in a pretty creative multimedia way.
Yeah.
And for sure, I think storytelling is a way of communicating history and connecting history to the present in ways, that we can be informed by it and that resonate today and can inspire us today.
Yep. I love it. And so in regards to, inspiring, do you hope that this will kind of inspire, some of your younger audience members and stuff to learn more about history, to get on a bike and to say, wow, look at all these amazing people and amazing women in the past, and let's learn more. Who else is out there?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
It's a show that really, we've been touring it for a long time and have had a really amazing opportunity to travel all over the country, all over the US as well. We've been to big cities and tiny towns, and we really the show's quite flexible in the way that it sets up, so it's made it pretty possible for us to tour to a lot of different venues. And I find that it has a really, it seems to speak to a really intergenerational crowd.
Yeah.
I think, young people, I mean, especially because it's this kind of piece of history that's still pretty obscure. And
Yes.
so if I had a quarter for every time somebody has said, I can't believe I've never heard of Annie Londonderry. And that's how I felt when I found out about her as well. And what's kind of neat, in the 10 years that the show has been touring, when I first researched the show, I found out about her because one of her descendants, her great great grandnephew, discovered Annie Londonderry in his family tree. And so he did this amazing research. His name was Peter Zutlin, and he wrote a book about her. First, he wrote an article, and in my research, I discovered this article that he'd written, and I was like, oh, this is exactly. Not only was I interested when I was beginning my research, not only was I interested in this idea of like the early feminist movement and the connection to cycling, but I was also thinking about advertising and the idea. I sort of had chosen the title of the show before I even wrote it.
Oh, nice.
So because first of all, of my own love of cycling, and then the other connection was that I was always interested in advertising and like how advertising, how it sort of works on us, or like the cleverness of it and the irritatingness of it and the pervasiveness of it, and the way that we are in this highly consumer society, and how present advertising is, especially for women, how women become a target market so often. And anyway, so those themes were all kind of present for me when I was researching. And then when I found Annie Londonderry's story, what was incredible about it to me was like, not only was she a woman riding alone on a bicycle around the world in 1895, like all of these facts were just like, what? But then also the way that she did it was that she sold advertising space on herself, on her riding costume, as they called it at the time, which was her clothes. So she actually found sponsors along the way, and she would wear different, ribbons and signs and hang them on her bike. So it was like this amazing combination of my themes all in one person, where she was a really smart business person as well as an athlete and a trailblazer and all of these things. She was kind of figuring out how to work the system and make sponsorship as she went along. So for all those reasons, I was really excited, and it feels like, the themes seem to resonate, like I said, a kind of across generations, because folks who are already interested in history, she's become better known actually over the 10 years, right? Because when I first was writing the show, the book was just hot off the press, and now in the intervening time, a lot more people have found out. It's like when you searched her on the internet at that time, a decade ago, there was really like a couple references. And now I think the word has spread, actually, like she is much better known, but it's still like it feels like so many women and other marginalized people who've been, weren't written into the history books. And so you have to go digging for those role models. And anyway, it's been fun to be part of like a movement spreading the word about her amazing history, and the other women also who are part of the story that SPIN weaves together.
That's awesome.
And to celebrate this. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, sorry to interrupt, but I love the part where she sold, because I didn't know the whole story about Annie Londonderry. But I love the part where she sold advertising on herself. She sold advertising on her bike. Like, she must have been one of the first people ever in human history to do that.
I think so. Like, I look at her definitely as one of the early
pioneers of
examples
that.
of like sports endorsement.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking in my head.
Making that connection. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. And when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, like, look how many people do it now. Like Annie was one of the pioneers. Maybe we don't know every little history that happened, but she had to be one of the first, like maybe 4 or 5 people in the world to ever do that. She had to be at that time.
Totally.
Like, it's so cool. Even when you think from that angle, like you said, about the marketing and the spin and the spin, I love it.
Yeah.
Like, so cool. So cool.
Yeah, I couldn't resist like the wordplay and the like the ideas that are just inside of her story and inside the metaphor of the bike was very captivating to me. And I'm, a songwriter and a poet, and like I love language a lot. So there was not only all these amazing stories to spin, pardon
Yeah,
the pun, but also all this language to kind of play with and like look at all the multiple meanings of all these words.
that's awesome. That's so cool. I'm inspired to go see it now. I was
Cool.
already
Well,
interested.
yeah, you got it.
I was already interested. I was like, oh, Candace and Juliet's my daughter. Candace is my wife. And I was like, oh, Candace and Juliet would love this. This sounds so fun. And I'm just interested because I think it's just a cool show, right? And I
Yeah,
was like, oh yeah, we have to go now.
definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I mean it is fun that it's a show that can I think like we've actually toured it in high schools before, so it like definitely appeals to teens and like younger
Yeah,
people, but it's
yeah.
also really interesting for adults. It's not made for one or the other, it's like,
Which is the best.
yeah,
That's the best kind of show that everybody can enjoy together.
for
That's
sure.
the best
For
kind
sure.
of show.
Yeah.
So on that note, have you ever performed any shows in Huntsville before?
The one time that I've only once, and it was
Okay.
at one, maybe the first Nuit Blanche that
Oh yeah.
happened. So I did, it was probably like 8 or 9 years ago or something. I don't
Yeah.
remember exactly the year.
Yeah.
It was a different piece that I performed as part of that. Um, yeah, there's another show that I've done a lot of touring, which is no longer a solo show, but it sort of started as a solo show, which at the
Okay.
time was called To Live in the Age of Melting. It was a piece about climate change
Hmm.
and the North and the history of colonization in the North.
Yeah.
And so I came to Huntsville with that. And then since then, it's turned into a show called Kinalik, These Sharp Tools. And it's a dialogue between myself and an Inuit artist from the Arctic.
Hmm.
And that show has toured actually like around the world in the last
Oh, cool.
years. So yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Huntsville was like one of the OG presentations at work.
Awesome.
And Dan Watson, who's the artistic director at the
Yeah.
center, is an old colleague and friend from Toronto. So
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, we love Dan. We
yeah,
love Dan.
I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, he's awesome. Him and Christina, they're great.
Totally.
Did you see their one show they did together recently? Oh, so good. So
Yeah.
we'll mention it. It'll be mentioned in another post.
Yes. Yeah.
It was
I'm a
so
big
good.
fan. I'm a big fan of Dan and Christina.
Yeah, they're so awesome.
Yeah.
On that note, so we've talked about what's great about the show. We don't. One of the questions I always ask, but I think we've kind of answered this question, but I'll ask it anyways.
Sure.
Is if I don't know you and I don't know anything about the show, and I say, Evalyn, why should I come? What would you
Mm.
say to me?
Yeah, I think we've covered some of it, but
I know we have, but I
I'll
always
pitch
ask
it again. I guess I would say, well, if you're interested in bicycles, this is
Mhm.
definitely a show for you.
Yeah.
If you enjoy music that is both like inventive, but in a kind of folk pop vein, and it also combines visuals, like it's a very multimedia
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
So if that sort of thing appeals to you, that's like tunes that are going to get you humming, some earworms. I'll leave you with some good earworms.
Nice.
And you'll be entertained and you'll learn some stuff. Like
I
it's
love
that
it.
kind of show that's a bit of yeah, it's not just entertaining. It's like there's kind of a lot to chew on, a lot to think about at the end,
I love
but
it.
it's fun. And the musical bike is really something to see also. And so the show is it's a duet really.
Yeah.
And myself, I'm accompanied by a percussionist by the name of Brad Hart, who plays the bike.
Nice.
And I credit him as Canada's foremost bicycle percussionist. But the bike is hooked up to what are called contact microphones. They're a kind of different microphone than you would talk in like on the radio or whatever, but they pick up vibration if you put them on an object that resonates. So we've placed a couple of these microphones on the bike. And what was amazing when we were exploring and experimenting to create the show was we discovered when you put one on the seat of the bicycle, it's an old bike that we use that has like a sprung seat, one of those 1970s, like kind of vinyl. It's
Yeah.
vinyl
Yeah.
springs underneath it. And when you hit it, it sounds like a bass drum when it's
Gotcha.
amplified through
Yes.
this kind of contact mic. And so there's a couple contact mics on the bike, and each part of the bike has a really different, interesting sound. The fenders sound different than the seat sounds
Nice.
different than the gears and the crank. So Brad uses he has quite an interesting little tech setup that's
Yep.
sort of, it's quite analog at the same time as he's using like loop pedals and stuff so that he can build soundscapes with the bike.
Gotcha.
So I think it's another pitch for the show, for people who were interested in like sound art and technology and kind of creative,
Definitely.
experimental ways of using your bicycle. Perhaps you too want to set up your bike in your garage with some contact mics and a mixing board.
Nice. Nice. I love it. But see, that is a selling point too. That is so cool. Like if I'm just, like you said, if I'm just into tech and I'm just into sound, that's for me, that's like, I gotta come see what this gentleman is doing with his bike.
Totally. Yeah, that it is kind of its own like track of the performance. Is the bicycle itself is a featured element. Yeah.
The bike is like, a co-star.
Yeah, it is. We say that in our press release. Co-starring bicycle.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Evalyn, now that we've talked all about the awesome show that's coming to Huntsville and all the great reasons why people need to go on and buy tickets if you haven't already, with you personally and your career, what is it about performing, especially in live audiences on stages that like you have for many, many years? What is it that like you love about that?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm not the first one to say this, but the connection with a live audience, is really just an experience that can't be replicated in any other way. There's a kind of energetic exchange that sometimes you feel it when the audience laughs, or you feel it when they react. You hear like a little inhale or a little moment. And even if it's not like everybody laughing, when it's one person over there that's chuckling at a joke, and that kind of sense of connectivity, I don't know, there's really nothing like it as a performer on stage. It's a very special experience. And I find it as an audience member too. I go to see lots of live performance, live music, live theater, dance. And it's a kind of immersive experience that's different than, now we're talking about immersive in terms of virtual reality or lots of digital things that are immersive. And to me, there's something that's like, the experience of gathering with people, and especially since the pandemic, it feels all the more special. Like I'm really aware of it in a new way, of how special it is to be with other people in a room, experiencing something together and having a collective. We're all having our own different reactions, but you're having those reactions at the same time as all these people. And then you walk out of there together, having really shared something that only happens there tonight in that way. Even if it's the same show, we've more or less said these same words and sung these same songs to all these audiences in different places. But actually that performance tonight, it's unique. Every time it's unique in whatever small ways.
Yes.
So I guess that's part of the poetry and the beauty of live performance to me.
I love that. That's beautiful. And it's true. It's true. When you're right, either being on stage or being in the audience, you feel it. You feel the person next to you, feel the people around you. And when you share that like you said, there could be a gasp or a laugh and whatever, and you're sharing that together, it does feel way more special than all the digital stuff out there. It's like this organic energy and aura that is created by everybody. Yeah, I totally understand what you mean. I haven't never performed on stage. Well, okay, once I did a bit part in Guys and Dolls. I was a boxer who got knocked out in the opening scene at the Algonquin Theater many years ago.
Amazing.
It was a very community-oriented, event, right? Once I was on stage and doing right. But yeah, even then I can remember everyone laughing when I fell down. So you feel it,
Yeah, you feel it. You really feel it.
right? So
Uh,
yeah, no, but more in the audience, obviously, going to live shows, I totally get what you mean. We're all together, and it's so cool. It's so cool. So
it's a
there's another reason to go, people. It's
right.
another
That's right.
reason to go. So one last question, and
Sure.
then I'll let you get on with your day, Evelyn. And so the last question I have for you is for young aspiring artists, young aspiring actors, musicians, people who want to perform. Um, any advice, maybe top one or two things you would give them for advice in their careers and coming up? What should they do?
Well, I guess the thing that I often say, because it's based on my own experience, is like encouraging people to not wait for somebody else to make an opportunity for you and to do your thing, like to figure out how to make opportunities for yourself to do the thing that you want to do. And so, in my case, that meant making one person shows, or like doing,
Nice.
or not just one person shows. I also have made lots of shows with other people, but not waiting for a theater or, to commission you or book your play or whatever. It's like, well, there's actually many kind of democratizing venues and opportunities out there, the Fringe Festival being one example.
Yes.
Like ways that you can test out your ideas in front of people. And I guess it kind of, I mean, I don't only work in live medium. I also have recorded lots of albums and done some filmmaking. But in terms of the live piece, like to other young people who are interested in live performance, there's no way to learn that except by live performance. You can train, like you can go to theater school, you go to music school, you dance, you could do post-secondary training, and that's
Hmm.
good. Although I don't think it's necessary for everybody.
Yeah.
A degree can be very helpful because it can
Y-
give you training and it gives you some credentials that will help you do other things, because inevitably as an artist, unless you're one of the 0.001%
Yeah.
that strikes it very lucky very early on, most arts careers is a commitment of a lifetime to working in a precarious sector. So it's about continuing to like hustle and try different things, and the beauty of it is that you get to do many different things and different projects and work with lots of different people. But I think when you're starting out, it's like putting yourself out there, figuring out ways to hone your craft, whatever
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah.
And in live performance, to do that in front of people, figure out ways to get that live feedback, to learn from peers and audiences so that you get better at what you do. And that'll help build your next steps. Each thing that you do prepares you for the next thing, for the next project, for the next song, for the next play.
I love it. That's awesome. Good advice from Evelyn.
Oh,
That's awesome.
thanks.
So, one last push for the show. It is on October
20th.
20th at the Algonquin Theatre in Huntsville, Ontario. Get your tickets, huntsvillefestival.ca, and you can go and see Evelyn and the bike and Mr. Hart and rock and
Right.
roll.
That's right.
All right. So thank you so much, Evelyn, for taking your time out and spending it with me and sharing your wonderful words with the audience and some great advice for up and coming artists.
Thank you for having me on the show. And I look forward to seeing people in Huntsville. It's going to be
Oh,
great. It's the first time that we've done the show actually since the pandemic. So it's going to be a really special show for us because it's our first time
yeah,
presenting it
yeah.
again.
That's wonderful. See, even more good news on why we should all go and see you and watch the
That's
wonderful
right.
performance. So
That's
on
right.
that note, thank you, Evelyn. Thank you to our sponsor, That Little Place by the Lights Italian Eatery in downtown Huntsville. And get your tickets, huntsvillefestival.ca, to go see Spin. All right. Bye for now, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. Bye.
Bye.